What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to go into getting your first job in IT or moving up in your current role in IT. I wanted to make this video to share my experience and give some tips and tricks on how to get a job in IT. So my name's Joshua, and my career path was I first started off as a help desk. I then moved into an IT install technician job, and then now I'm currently where I'm at IT support specialist level one. Some things that I'll cover in this presentation will be home labs and projects, certifications, resume and LinkedIn tips, interview prep, and some job hunting strategies. So let's get started here. First, I'm going to go over my background and my journey. So I first started with a 8-month course for applied cybersecurity at a trade school, where I got my CompTIA Security Plus. And then my continuing education has been through online courses such as Udemy and Coursera as my main two websites to use. And another aspect to this continuing education is I have a personal home lab to learn and simulate scenarios. I think a home lab is super important. I'll get into that in the next slide. Um, it's been a huge help. You can simulate many different things, and it's something really good to put on your resume. So here's my work experience. I was a help desk for 3 months. I then transitioned into being an IT install technician for 1 year, and then now I'm currently where I'm at, which is a IT support specialist. So some of the things that I got experience with as a help desk was I learned how to troubleshoot. I got very familiar with some ticketing systems, and I've also learned how to help users. And as for my IT install job, I had hands-on experience setting up network infrastructure. So these were things like switches, servers, PCs, phones, laptops, all sorts of things, cameras, all that. And now at my IT support specialist job, I'll have some more experience with technical troubleshooting, some experience with system administration, and definitely some user support. So let's talk about the importance of a home lab. Some of the examples of a home lab, right, are going to be virtualization servers. Um, this can be done using like Proxmox or VMware on your system. Setting up VLANs, um, configuring firewalls, and simulating enterprise environment and scenarios using Active Directory and Microsoft 365 admin. So how do you do this? You can use old or used equipment. You don't have to spend like $1,000 on a home lab. You can just go buy a beater laptop from Facebook Marketplace, eBay, anything, right? And just install Proxmox on it, right? Or Windows, and then install VirtualBox. You can use a Type 1 or Type 2 hypervisor, which is kind of what I just talked about just now. So Type 1 is considered a bare metal virtualization software. This would be something like Proxmox. And Type 2 hypervisors is something that sits on the OS, like the host OS. So you would install Windows first, and then you would install the virtualization software. If you're going to use old equipment or something that's not nearly as powerful, I would recommend using a Type 1 hypervisor such as Proxmox. Because if you use a Type 2, if you install like say Windows 10 or Windows 11 on an old laptop, and then you try to install VirtualBox on it, you're limiting how much overhead performance you have because the host OS is going to be using a lot of those resources. Whereas Proxmox, it's bare metal, so you have pretty much very like little overhead with performance. That's kind of the next two bullet points here is use VirtualBox on an OS or install Proxmox virtual environment on an old machine. I would recommend installing Proxmox virtual environment on an old machine. It can be a little more complicated, but I think it's definitely worth it. So now why have a home lab? This demonstrates not only book knowledge, but practical knowledge, right? So when you get a certification, and I don't mean to downplay certifications, right? They're super huge, but very, how do I want to put this? It's a test, right? It's a multiple choice test. There's some open answers, there's some like labs in there, but it's just a test. right? It's just a brain dump, so to speak. Um, but what the home lab does is that it kind of reinforces your certification, right? It gives your certification something to stand on, right? So now you're not just saying that I know how to do it. Now it's I know how to do it and I've actively applied it in a real world setting. So that's why I think home labs are super important for kind of supporting your certification. Um, and another reason to do it is that it builds practical experience with configuring networks and using networking tools. I can't tell you how many times I've had to use Wireshark or Nmap on my home network to either verify something is working or try and troubleshoot. What's going on. Like, why is my machine not able to ping another machine? Well, let me open up Wireshark and see what's going on. So super important. Next, we're going to talk about certifications and what really matters. So first, let's go over what certifications do. Certifications open doors. So this kind of means that if you want a particular role in IT or cybersecurity, getting that first entry level certification is really, it's going to open that door for you. It's going to make that path available for you to walk down. Another thing that certification can do is it helps you get noticed, right? So obviously, if you have a certification relative to the role that you're applying to, you will get noticed more than someone who doesn't have a certification and is applying for the same job, right? So they help you get noticed and they also help you open doors. What they also do is that it shows technological literacy, right? So it shows that you're not just some guy who is just click and apply, just using quick apply on any job posting that shows up, right? It shows that you actually have the knowledge, you have the literacy of technology, and this is something that you actually want to be around. So now let's go over what certifications do not. They do not replace experience. Um, Experience is always going to beat out a certification. For my, you know, uh, job application and job hunting experience. They do not guarantee you a job. There was actually a lot of clamor about getting a six-figure job after getting a security plus in my class at my trade school, which I won't lie, I kind of fell for it too. But as I got closer to graduating, I was like, yeah, that's probably not gonna be how it goes. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not gonna say it's impossible to get $100,000 job, but definitely unlikely. And certifications do not speak for themselves. Okay, so you really have to sell yourself. You really have to tie your certifications in with how is this going to help you in this role? How does it make you a good candidate for this role? And that's kind of where I think that the certifications and home labs kind of go hand in hand. You can use certifications to show that you have the drive and the knowledge of the technology, but then you can use the home lab to kind of support that and show that you have practical experience. So now we'll talk about which certifications to get. Um, from looking online, and a lot of creators also kind of repeat this same sentiment, is you really want a network specific certification, a security certification, and then like a Microsoft or Windows certification, right? Because this kind of covers kind of dips your toes in all three. This, from what I've seen online, this is kind of like the trifecta here. Network certification is super important because you got to understand how things work, how things operate. If you want to troubleshoot efficiently, security is also super important. As IT support people, you are going to have more privileges and more access than other users and other people on campus. So you're more likely to be spearphished. You're more likely to have like a phishing email sent to you, right? So it's super important to have those two. And it's also really important to have a Microsoft or Windows certification. Those seem to be like, actually, I don't think I've ever heard any other company you like not use Microsoft or not use Windows in some way, shape, or form in their network stack. So those are really important to have. So now let's talk about building the resume. So a good checklist to follow is going to be you want to tailor your resume, update your resume, apply your resume, and also review your resume. Okay. Um, Some tips for like tailoring your resume. Use keywords from the job description. This is super important. This is kind of what the hiring manager is going to be looking at. Um, Super important to use the keywords because then when you tailor your resume to that job, you're more likely to hear back, because the hiring manager or whoever's looking at it is seeing what they want to see, like rather than if you just made a general resume and it's just kind of generic and maybe even bland, they might pass it up for something that's more tailored, right? List your certifications at the top. I think this is super important. This is kind of like a cosmetic issue. What's the word I'm looking for? This is anecdotal. Um, I don't know if it actually has a real effect on how the hiring manager views your resume, but I just think it's important to have the certifications at the top. That way, if the hiring manager sees it, it's one of the first things they see, and it might interest them to read more uh, down the resume, right? As opposed to having them on the bottom, and maybe they get bored, or maybe they lose interest in the resume. Like when they're halfway down, they see like your other job experience. Highlight home projects. This is also super important. I'll keep stressing that over and over again, that home labs and home projects are super important, especially if you have no prior experience in IT, because this is something that you can talk about in the interview, and this is something that can really hook onto a hiring manager and get them really interested in looking at you as a candidate. And keep it one page. This is actually, out of all the things here, this is probably the hardest part, because you have to be very selective with what jobs you put on there and what projects that you have to put on there, right? So this is why I think tailoring is super important, because you're gonna have to constantly you might want one project highlighted over another depending on what role you're going for. So a good template to use would be like a mission statement or a summary, really. But just kind of just a quick summary of yourself. Who you are. How you started. You know, and then next you can go into your certifications, right? And then you want your relevant work experience first. So I made the mistake of putting my work in a chronological order. So I had two jobs. I worked at a grocery store, and I also worked at the help desk at the same time. Um, I would put the present job that I had at the top before the help desk. Not a huge issue, but looking back, I would definitely put help desk at the top. So that's the first thing they see, right? Like you want the relevant job experience at the top. You want it to be the first thing they see to kind of hook them into reading more down the resume, right? As opposed to, say if you worked at a grocery store, and then you worked somewhere else, right? And they have to read through two jobs and two descriptions of those jobs before they get to the relevant job. You might not keep their interest for that long. They might have just, gone on to the next resume. And then you want your projects after your work experience. This can actually probably be below certifications. I would probably, now that I'm looking at this, probably put projects below certifications, just to have it there, and again to really hook the hiring manager or whoever into reading more. And then you want to associate your skills with those projects, right? So you want to list your skills and then kind of tie them in or connect them to the jobs that you've had previously or some of the projects that you've done. So now we're going to talk about LinkedIn and networking. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? That's probably more important than what you know. If you have a connection, you use it. Okay. There's no reason for you not to use a connection, because it just makes everything so much easier, right? There's been plenty of times where I've started a new job, and I asked some of the coworkers, how did you get this job? Like, oh well, my brother works for this guy, or my mom knows the hiring manager here and got me an interview, right? Like use your connections. There's no shame in it. I know a lot of people kind of have some animosity towards it, but that's because they can't do it, right? So who you know, not what you know. So to get in with LinkedIn, build your LinkedIn profile and network with others, right? Create posts relevant to your job interest. I saw a lot more replies and callbacks and interviews being scheduled when I started building my LinkedIn profile and documenting my projects on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is super underrated. I've seen some people give some hate to LinkedIn. I just don't think you're using it right. You're definitely using it the wrong way, or you're just not using it how you're supposed to. It combines like social media and job hunting, you know? So I think it's perfect for getting a job. Really build up your LinkedIn profile. It's kind of like your portfolio. I've seen some people call it. And definitely create posts relevant to your job interests so that when the recruiter goes onto your profile, they see those job or they see those projects and they want to call you back for an interview. Yeah. So the next bullet point here is document your home lab projects. Post about newly obtained certifications. Those things are huge, right? When you build a portfolio like that, and you're applying to jobs through LinkedIn, and then the recruiter can go to your account and see that you've done all these projects, you have these certifications, right? And then that you've done these projects to back up your certification, you're far more likely to get a call back. So I had a little example post here, like a caption. Just finished configuring a VLAN. This taught the importance of network segmentation and gave me hands-on experience configuring routers, switches, and endpoints. Right. So as a hiring manager, now I see that not only do you have a network certification, but here you're actually applying your knowledge here, right? So this person actually already has hands-on experience, and they don't have a job yet, right? So I feel like as a recruiter, I would be more likely to call this person in for an interview if this was a post on their profile. So now we're going to talk about mindset and soft skills. So the mindset that you should have when you're first applying for a job, is that your immediate goal is experience. Okay. So yes, you want a job. Yes, that's the end goal. But if you keep that end goal on your mind for too long, and you keep applying, and you start getting that fatigue, right? You start getting discouraged. I know it happened with me. Um, I was applying to like 5 jobs a week, right? Every day after I come home from work, apply for a job, right? I was just applying like as they came in, and I wasn't getting any callbacks, or if I would get a response, it would be something like, well, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. That can be super discouraging, right? So I want you to have the mindset of you're just trying to get experience, okay? Um, you're probably not going to get your job on the first interview, and that's all right, okay? Because it's important to get those interviews, because now you're getting used to being interviewed, right? Which was a huge problem for me. I would get super nervous. I wouldn't know how to talk. I wouldn't know how to convey my skills or how to convey myself to the recruiters, and I can kind of come off a little bit nervous or a little bit unsure of myself. So getting those multiple interviews, right, really helps, right? So that's your immediate goal, is just to get experience being interviewed. Have full confidence in yourself and your resume, and treat the interview like a friendly conversation. After maybe like my third or fourth interview, I started to get real comfortable with talking to people, whether that be in person or over on a Zoom call. Um, and having those home lab projects and those certifications made me very confident in my resume, and I was eager to talk about them. So with those two things combined, it made interviewing very, very easy. And then on top of having the mindset of I'm just trying to get experience in an interview, really relaxes you, right? Because then now you're not having that weight of like, I gotta get this job. I gotta get this job now. Like if I don't get this job, then what am I gonna do? Right. So you don't have that weight or that worry on your mind. Instead, you're just freely talking about yourself, and it's very easy to seem more genuine, to seem more upbeat, right? It also gives off a better impression to the interviewers. And then here I say, every interview you have is bringing you one step closer to getting a job. You will learn what the common questions are and what most teams are looking for in a candidate. Even if you do not get the job, getting the interview was a win. So that's something that you need to also kind of put into your mind, is that getting a job is the end goal. Yes, it's what you want, But if you get an interview, that's a win. Okay, you should already celebrate that. That's a win. You're halfway there, right? That's half the battle gone, right? Um, and it's also super important because every interview you have, you will get better because you will understand what the recruiters are looking for in certain types of roles and what are the most common questions. And then you can even start to prep yourself and have like a mock interview, right, with yourself, with the questions that they ask. And then you'll be able to refine your answers more and more. And another side note here that's not on the PowerPoint, but when you're asked a question, you don't have to answer it immediately. You can sit there and think for a minute, right? If they ask you, well, here's XYZ problem. What's the issue, right? What's the fix? You don't need to fire back an answer like right away, right? You want to sit there and think about it for a second. And that can actually be a good sign to them, and they'll say like, oh, okay, this person is going to think about things logically before they just go in there and take a first step, right? So some soft skills here. This is kind of things that you can't really teach somebody. This is kind of more like a personality. But communication skills, customer service skills, and problem solving and work ethic. Um, Anyone can be taught something about technology. What people cannot teach is personality and attitude. Be sure to highlight your soft skills and how they benefit you in certain scenarios. Um, since I worked in a grocery store, I was able to highlight my customer service skills very well. I was able to talk about how I would handle an upset user or an upset customer. And I really think that working in a grocery store has significantly helped me secure the roles that I've got. Um, Communication skills is another huge thing. If you work in a team environment, right, which is kind of what a grocery store is, as a stock clerk, um, communication skills are huge, right? You're going to be communicating with your fellow coworkers, with your manager, with users, with staff, whoever you're helping at the time. You're going to be communicating with them a lot. So it's a very important skill to have. And then problem solving and work ethic. Problem solving is super huge. That's kind of your whole. It's kind of your whole shtick as a IT support is solving networking problems. So you got to really want to do that and really be good at that. And a really good work ethic. This applies to really any job, right? You want to make sure that the job that you're applying for and interviewing for is actually something that you want to do and it's something that you enjoy. So super important. Next, we're gonna go over interview prep. So pre-interview, some tips that I have are research the company, not just the role. You can do this for two things. Number one, see if it's a company you actually want to work for and that you align with. And number two, this gives you the chance to kind of flex on the recruiters that you actually do your research and that you're knowledgeable, right? And that you're willing to, put in some extra effort. And you can drop some fun facts about the company that you learned or highlight something that you like about the company that you saw while researching it. Next tip is prepare 2 or 3 stories about a time you solved a problem or learned something fast. This is super helpful. This is actually one of probably the common questions that I got asked in my interviews was tell me about a time when blank, right? Or tell me about a time you dealt with the angry customer. How did you handle it? What did you do? Right? Tell me about a time you had to work in a high stakes situation, right? A high stress environment, right? So make sure you have some stories prepared for those type of questions. And you want to answer the most common interview questions in your head. So literally as I'm like driving home from my other job, I'm having a mock interview in my head and I'm answering the questions in my head. Um, this is super helpful because then it makes your answers more refined and feel more natural. And you can give like some really good answers, right? That just sound natural to the interviewer, right? And not like you're trying to read a script. Um, and this is a really good tip, I think, here too. Use AI for a mock interview at XYZ company. So you can go to ChatGPT, give it a prompt like, hey, I want to do a mock interview for, an IT support role at whatever company, right? Tell it to give you some common questions and tell it to give you feedback afterwards, right? And then go through the mock interview, look at the feedback, and see what you can improve upon. That's super helpful for me. Um, During the interview, stay relaxed and friendly. You've practiced for this, right? Ideally, you've practiced for this, right? So no reason to freak out, no reason to get scared, like I was at first. Ideally, you've practiced for this, you've practiced for the most common interview questions, and then now it's simply just being you, right? Just speaking. You should be excited. Getting an interview is half the battle, right? Exactly what I said earlier. Getting your interview is half the battle already won. Okay, so now you just have to really sell yourself. Um, the hardest part is getting an interview, right? In the interviews that I've had, it was fairly easy to get to the second and third round. Obviously, it gets a little bit harder, as you move up, um, because again, you are competing against other people. Um, so yeah, it's hard to get in to an initial interview. It's very easy to get to the second or third, but then once you start getting to the end of the final rounds of the interview, that's where you really gotta lock in. And next here we have if you do not know an answer to a question, show your thought process. Okay, a lot of these interviewers aren't expecting you to nail every single answer or every single question that they ask you, right? Sometimes they're going to ask you a question they may know for sure that you don't know, but they just want to see how you think, right? They want to see how you think through it. So you don't need to know the answers to every question that they ask, um, but it's good to just show your thought process and then try to give them an answer, right? Give them an answer that you worked for. And this is just what I said earlier here. You do not need to answer a question as soon as it's asked. Take some time to think to give a good answer. This is super important because I would think that I need to fire back with an answer, and then the answer that I would give would be poor, right? It would suck. So, really think about the question, think about what answer you want to give them, right? Because this does two things. Number one, it shows that you'll think, and then number two, it refines the answer that you would have given them, and it makes it into a better answer that they can then think on for after the interview. So next we'll go into some job hunting strategies. So you have the sniper strategy, right, which is quality over quantity. This is the one that I personally recommend. Um, Read deep into the job description and tailor your resume to target that role and company specifically. Use keywords, skills, and experience that closely fit the role description. Super important. This is what's going to give you the most callbacks. So let's go over some pros and cons of this. So the pros: higher interview conversion rate. If you tailor your resume and you really snipe out those applications, you'll have a higher rate of getting interviews. And it also presents you as thoughtful and motivated to that recruiter, right? Because they're going to see that you tailored this resume, right? They're going to see that it's not just some generic blank resume or like some cookie cutter resume. They're going to see that you actually put time and effort into creating this. And some cons here are slower, so you have fewer applications sent. So if you're trying to get a job as fast as possible, you don't care what the role is, the sniper strategy is probably not going to be for you. It does require more time because you have to read into the job description and make it an entirely new resume for each application. And it can be discouraging, right? When you put all this effort into a resume, right, and say they don't get back with you, or say that they went into, or they say that they went with other candidates, that can be super discouraging, right? Because you just spent all this time curating this resume for this company, and now they're going with somebody else, right? So just something to take in mind. Then you have the shotgun strategy. This is quantity over quality. You design a general resume that includes core skills, common keywords, and relative experience to common roles that you are looking for. Little regard for what role. Some pros of this is a higher volume of applications can be sent, so you have a higher chance of getting an interview. It's useful for broad entry positions, right? So you go on Indeed, LinkedIn, or whatever have you. Just go to the entry level filter and then just apply away. Some cons: it's low quality. Interviews can be less meaningful. Um, because it's a general resume, you may not have as much to talk about because you have to kind of forego certain things. Maybe it's like forego certain projects. And then you have the possibility of getting a low fit role, right? So maybe you apply for a role, you get an interview for a role that you didn't really want to be in. So, that's just something else to take in mind there with the shotgun strategy. So for a quick summary, certifications, very useful for opening doors and opportunities. Great way to stay knowledgeable and motivated. Good talking points for interviews with potential employers. Home labs, useful for getting familiar and gaining experience in enterprise level networking. Serves as good material for LinkedIn portfolio building, and gives you practical knowledge to back up your certifications. And soft skills. These are things you just can't teach. These are just as important as knowledge in the field. Sometimes who someone is can be more important than what they know or what experience they have. Companies may actually be willing to forego with someone with more experience or more certification if they seem kind of abrasive or they seem kind of rugged. They'll probably take someone else who's more friendly and just gives off a better vibe, right? If that makes any sense. Um, and that's it. So hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully you learned something from this. I just really thought I should share my experience with the job hunt, because I just finally got a really good job. And yeah, peace out.